everyone, and welcome to Let's Take Five, the podcast where we pick a cinema great and take five of their films to show their excellence in range. My name is Austin Luger.
My name's Eric Martindale.
And we are here at the top of another set. It's a very exciting time. We get to spend the next 5 weeks on a cinema legend, and this time we are doing the very interesting director Werner Herzog. He has been in quite a number of things. He's made an insane number of movies, and we have picked five of his craziest.
Yeah.
We will be covering the next 5 weeks Aguirre, Wrath of God, Nosferatu the Vampyre, Fitzcarraldo, Grizzly Man, and Encounters at the End of the World. And let's start right at the beginning. Aguirre, Wrath of God.
It's hard not to pick a crazy Herzog film, right?
No. I mean, he has a couple boring ones, but, they're still a little bit crazy.
Yeah, he's kind of a crazy guy. So I've never seen... I'd never seen three of the films that we're doing, so this is very unique for me, because I'd seen Grizzly Man and I'd seen Nosferatu the Vampire.
Yeah.
That distinction is important.
Yes.
But I hadn't... but not in a long time for Nosferatu, so the Vampire. And anyway, so Aguirre, the Wrath of God. I think it's I think it's really, really good. But I want you to start with your thoughts, because we didn't communicate. A lot of times with some of these movies we're rewatching, but this is kind of unique in the sense that I saw a movie for the first time and we haven't talked about it yet.
Right.
So I'd rather, before you contradict me that way, because I'm going to talk about how great the film is.
Right.
What do you think about the film?
No, I think it's really great.
Yeah.
It's really good. It was such a great movie to rewatch, because it is one of those films that kind of it gets soaked into your memory, but not exactly a plot point, just kind of feelings. Mm-hmm. So it almost felt like watching it anew, just because you just kind of get back into the mindset. You just think of, I thought of a couple key moments, the small animals, just the madness in general, but really it was like taking that boat ride again and being with them.
So the quest is to search for El Dorado, which we know doesn't exist because it doesn't. So you know that this quest is doomed from the very, very beginning, as if the intrusive, ominous score. This film would not be the same without the score.
Oh, it's so eerie.
Yeah, I know. And it's meant to be heard. You know what I mean? I mean, you could say that about most scores are meant to make you feel. This is meant to do that, but also they want you to... It's part of the picture. They want you to feel it. And it wouldn't be the same movie without it. So at the very beginning, we get this wide shot of this impossible... steep ledge, and then walking towards what is a river in the rainforest on the search for El Dorado, and they're going to embark on this quest, and it just seems like, wow, this is really, really depressing, mainly because, one, wow, all these people are going to die anyway because they're in the jungle, and two, there is no such thing as El Dorado. So from the very get-go, I don't know what it is. I have an affection for romantic, and I mean romantic in the actual sense of the word, romantic era art, in the sense that, okay, so we're going to go on this journey, and we're never going to make it, probably, but we're going to go because we're going to go forward. That's why The Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog is my favorite painting. I just always have loved that. It's always been very personal to me in ways I can't really touch on or explain. Aguirre, The Wrath of God, had that same sort of vibe to me, to where even though Aguirre, who's insane, I mean, he's absolutely insane and by all accounts evil, I couldn't help but empathize with that feeling of longing and wanting and seeking immortality, like something that's never going to be there. And yeah, it was just a really, really personal film to me. It's like The Fountain in the same regard, right? Only the characters are obviously a lot more likable people in that.
But also conquistadors.
I know. So let's get down to brass tacks here. I love conquistadors.
Yeah.
Okay.
Put a conquistador in a film, he's going to love it.
No, but really, though, I mean, it is that idea of, seeking immortality in different ways, and wanting more. And this is a film about transcendence. Like that's what the film is about, that. And the film itself is transcendent because it's paving the way of so many other films that are going to come before it. I mean, I talked to you very briefly about it and said Apocalypse Now would either not exist or be a completely different film without Aguirre, the Wrath of God. And
absolutely.
Francis Ford Coppola confirmed that because I ended up reading about it later. It was influential as it was good, and as it was personal to me. It's one of my favorite films that we've covered on this podcast, to the point where it would be in my top 5, maybe, as we talked about, maybe number 2, 3, somewhere in that range.
And it's such an incredible film because it allows for so many elements of interpretation. Because I actually took away a lot of different things from what you're saying right now. Mm-hmm. I saw their quest as what you're kind of describing is Don Quixote and his windmills, and I kept seeing them as assholes trying to fight an actual giant.
Yeah,
it's not a romantic image. They're going up a beast they can't tame, and it isn't an element for me that like they should have gone in the first place. Their motivations are greed and cruelty, and kind of just like taking all they can get out of the land.
Well, and that's true, and that's absolutely true. But considering the ilk they're cut from, and the fact that, I mean, why do we think conquistadors are here?
Yeah.
I mean, this is what they're here to do: rape and pillage the land and make a name for themselves. I mean, that's what they're there to do. It's not like they were taught any better. I mean, there's a moral sense of basic. There's not many shades of gray here. What they're doing is bad. By and large, but at the same time, even if the process is just proving what we already know about them is that they're bad people, that still doesn't remove that they have Aguirre has this desire to be immortal, to live forever, to be known forever, which is something that I can relate to.
Sure,
and that's kind of what elevates the film for me, even if he is an asshole, because he's definitely an asshole.
Yeah,
he's a psychopath.
Yeah.
But so was Christopher Columbus, and guess what? We know who he is. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I'm getting at here.
Well, what's interesting is the element of their quest and his kind of thoughts about immortality as well. Beyond the fact that they are conquistadors, whenever you have a journey towards the impossible, I think the quest is ultimately a religious one.
Yeah,
because
it's a great point.
Because you're going towards something that's more abstract. And that's what they're trying to do. And that abstraction for me was always so clear throughout the film just because of the way they approach the goal. They don't take off their conquistador outfits. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. They're in the jungle and they're wearing this battle armor that is very iconic. It's the same way we can kind of recognize a stereotypical Viking or Roman soldier. These are conquistadors. Mm-hmm. And there's no practical reason to wear this helmet in the jungle, but it is an iconic image for themselves, and it's their own sense of pride and power.
Yeah, so basically in general, and about the plot, because there's not too much to it, they start on this journey down the river to find El Dorado, and not all of them can make it, so they decide to go on the journey down the river. So they start sending boats down the river, and one boat in particular has Aguirre on it, who uses Shakespearean-like tactics to rise through the ranks and eventually make himself the leader of this small regiment of what dwindles down to being very few people, maybe 8 or 9 people. But then it goes further than that, because now he starts then to have delusions of grandeur of finding El Dorado and then rebelling against Spain and literally conquering Spain, which is madness.
Yes.
But that's also the soup du jour of Aguirre as well. This is the movie is about madness. I mean, right?
Right. And I love the idea of conquering throughout this film, because Herzog, as we're going to be speaking for 5 weeks in a row, he has some thoughts against nature.
Yeah.
Mostly that nature will kick your ass in every fight, and it's never a fair fight. Mm-hmm. And with this, like, when I think of conquering, you think of, trees being taken down, roads being paved, castles being risen. That doesn't happen here. You have a guy on a boat saying, "Oh, everything in this river's ours now.
Yeah.
We did it. I love that just like the wilderness continues, and there's just so many animals in this film. Yeah. Animals who are not threatened by them. They just kind of keep existing around them because they now just become part of the landscape, a very strange part of the landscape. They're not beating it.
And the indigenous people end up filling that sort of role as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's wide shots you'll see of the riverbank, and you'll see what you think is maybe one of those people. But maybe it wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
The way it's always shot from the wide, and the paranoia of going down the river and looking from side to side. For instance, there's one scene where the boat gets caught. I don't know how he shot this. I have no idea. I was just sitting there. So a raft gets caught in a whirlpool, and they're fighting with it all night, and they want to go and save. One raft wants to go save the other raft, and that's when Aguirre's like, that's when he starts to break off. It's like, you're crazy. Those people are dead. There's no way you can save them. And you literally watch these people actually fight a whirlpool. That was so dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't know how he filmed it. That's this type of movie. It was so crazy on how he was capable or how he was able to do such things that I was able to enjoy movies in a way I'm not normally able to, because I stopped thinking about how it was made. Because to think about that would be a fruitless endeavor. I would get nothing out of that. And then the next day, they're all dead on that boat. Maybe the people killed him, maybe not. We don't really know. That's the thing. And there's so much of that madness, again, in the film that sort of, it feels like a fever dream. One shot in particular, and I mentioned to you, too, again, when we talked about it very briefly, was that they're going down the river at one point, and one person thinks the other person's having a hallucination, and they see a ship that's stuck up in a tree a big-ass Spanish galleon stuck up in a tree, and it's maybe 80 feet in the air. That's a real ship up there. And it's actually really there. The one guy thinks it's a dream, but it's not. A fever dream. And again, that's when it's like, this movie's mad. It's just absolute madness. I believe that tree got up there, and that ship got up there, and the possibilities of what could lead to such a circumstance will drive you insane if you think about them. Like, it's just insane. How did that ship get there? Because I believe it did. I know it did. I'm looking at it. And again, it's almost like Rashomon in that way, where you have to trust what the camera's showing you, and then you have to think about that for a little bit. I don't know. I just loved that. I just thought it was awesome.
Was the ship called the Black Rock?
Okay.
I think it had to be in Lost.
It had to be a reference to it?
Yeah, I think so. Their very film knowledge is quite high in that show.
Yeah.
I have always kind of assumed that was a reference.
Yeah, if anyone's out there in podcast lands watched Lost, there's a ship in the middle of the jungle.
Middle of an island.
So I had to get there,
Yeah. And it's... The way Herzog approaches madness, it is so close to the truth that you kind of feel like you're going mad during it.
I know. I was watching this on a laptop, in Brooklyn. I was away for a wedding, and it's had that same effect on me on that little small screen, just sitting there watching it. I didn't need anything else. It was just that entertaining and that insane. I'd never seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it.
Well, Herzog's techniques towards filmmaking, and I keep learning a little bit more, and I kind of want to keep a bit of it a mystery. Like he made a film school a couple years ago, but he basically, it was like a weekend seminar at a hotel where I think he just kind of rambled for 2 days straight. But apparently in it, he taught you the important things about how to film things. Not a shot list or any of that crap. It's how to forge documents so you can go film in places that you're not supposed to. It's how you have to sneak a camera into your luggage so you can film the crazy stuff and whatnot.
Well, his first camera that he used, he stole.
Yeah.
And he said he doesn't consider it stealing because, if you're a farmer, you got to plant seeds. Mm-hmm. If you're making films, you need a camera.
Yeah.
It's not it's just who he was or whatever.
He
still stole it.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep Springer anecdotes for the 5 weeks because I got to see him speak at IU.
Yeah.
For a couple days there for a series of lectures, and it was the greatest thing ever. These were so many free lectures. I only spent $3, and I saw 3 films, a Q&A, and a long lecture, and the number of Herzog stories that are already out there is hysterically high. Mm-hmm. But I loved one they had early on when he got to go to school in America for college. He was there a week and he hated all of authority, so he dropped out, and that completely violated his visa. But he still liked being in America, so he just kept selling TVs over the border to Mexico to pay for his apartment. He goes, a lot of TVs, some guns, mostly TVs.
But that doesn't surprise me at all.
No.
Klaus Kinski, who's the lead in this, who's unbelievable in this film. I mean, the film. He is as important to this film as Daniel Day-Lewis is to There Will Be Blood. I mean, it's like that. It's that big of a deal.
When I started watching Aguirre, I was thinking, because our last foreign director we covered was Akira Kurosawa, and his relationship with Toshiro Mifune is now cinema history. Mm-hmm. I go, oh crap! I just picked one of the other biggest director-actor collaborators in world cinema history.
So yeah, I mean, the famous story from this set, which a lot of people know, was that, or a lot of people have heard of at this point, even if they haven't seen the film, and they actually can identify this film by that story, is that at one point, Kinski wanted to play the role a lot more subtle, and Herzog wanted him to be more flamboyant and big and loud. And what ended up happening was you ended up actually getting a mesh of both in the film, and it ends up working brilliantly. But Kinski was mad about that and said he wanted to stop for the day, so Herzog pulled a gun on him and told him to get back and act, which Kinski later in his autobiography refutes by saying, actually, that's not true at all. I had the only gun on set. So, there are stories that allegedly he got mad at one point, Kinski did, and fired a gun in the direction of the extras, blowing one of their fingers off. And you know what? I believe it.
Oh, yeah.
Because Kinski's crazy in that film. That film, and watch how what they do in that film and where they're shooting that film. It had to absolutely be a nightmare. They had to all. I mean, they were method acting that. They had to been.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just insane.
Well,
there's no way not to romanticize it. They were there. I mean,
I can't wait for Fitzcarraldo.
Yeah.
I mean, that set got a documentary about it.
Yeah.
That was.
Mm-hmm.
And, as we talk about these kind of silly aspects of Herzog or the dangerous aspects or just maybe he is insane, he's really strong at crafting the story. Mm-hmm. I mean, there isn't just we're not kind of laughing at the absurdity of it. It seems incredibly tight and well made.
Yeah.
I love the way he keeps examining classism in this film, because just like in that opening shot you talked about where there's just so many of them on this mm-hmm. journey. But at one point you then see a couple of men carrying... What are those? The ladies.
What are they? The carriages, but they're being held up by people.
Right.
And there's a name for that.
Yeah, and it's you got fancy garb, you got all this kind of stuff, and all you can think is, why the hell do you have that?
Yeah, why are these ladies here? Why is this here? Why? I mean, it does seem not even like the horses. It seems unnatural
absolutely.
Taking them down that hill. It just seems. You're right. It seems crazy.
And also the fact that they have slaves and whatnot. Once you completely immerse yourself in a world like this, I'm not saying that you immediately become feral, but you should start to examine your priorities. And these people, I think their tragedy is centered around the fact that they never do. Mm-hmm. And that's what causes them to lose more and more track of reality.
I'm glad you said reality. I was literally right about to say it becomes impossible for them to confront any type of reality because reality doesn't exist out there. There's no time or space. It's just that raft going down the river.
I never really thought about time. You just kind of really lose track of how long they're there because there's no real markers in their distance.
Yeah, they do remind you of dates because you're following along one of the priests that's along with him, one of the monks. So he's kept a log in his diary that keeps track of the dates, but
of course, yes.
But even then, it's okay.
Yeah,
maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's just it's nuts.
I love those passages because if we're seeing what really happened, his words are going to be what will be remembered, basically. And it just never captures exactly what we're seeing.
So towards the end of the film, you see everyone's dead. Spoilers.
Yeah.
We know those are off. Yeah. Aguirre is standing on the raft He's the only one left alive. Maybe everyone's dead. I honestly don't know. The movie's so crazy. I really don't know. This could all be in a dream. I have no clue. But you get a sense that this will be the coming of God moment where he's going to realize that he's led all these men to their death and that he's going to die and all this other stuff. And then you see these little monkeys get on the boat, and I mean like literally like a little thousand of these little monkeys, and again sort of nature sort of enveloping him and crushing him. He's just a man out here. He's nothing. He's a piece of carbon floating down a river is what he is.
Yeah.
And still in those final moments, he sits there in a haunting, and I used the word Shakespearean earlier because this is one of the few films I've ever seen, or I'm just saying one of the few stories I've ever seen that actually evoked Shakespeare to me. This really does. It's a very Shakespeare type of story. It has Shakespeare type of characters. It has Shakespeare type of plot devices. Just has fewer of them, but he's there. He's still plotting his kingdom. As he's just drifting away down this river. He's still plotting his kingdom when he takes over Spain and when he has all that gold, and he's still there doing that. And he delivers an incredible soliloquy. It was just great. It's just great. I know I just keep reiterating that, but you get to a certain point with this film, it leaves me breathless in a way I've never really felt before because there's not that much tangible here to talk about. It's just feelings. That's kind of what you're left with.
Absolutely. And so many things add to it. Every piece fits together. The score, like you mentioned, the wideness of the shot, just because of just the utter repetition of the jungle. But they're clearly not just using the same bit of river. They're clearly going down the river themselves. So it just feels like it just keeps continuing. And the more they continue, the scope of it keeps getting larger and larger. You know, you hear about the Amazon jungle, but you don't really have a true understanding of what that is until you see them trapped in it.
Yeah, and I've always been interested, too, in films where, you know, if you get like an apocalypse type of a situation or you get people on their own and desperate, I've always been attracted to stories where you watch how the people sort of eat each other. Like I've always been, and almost literally in this case, but they do run into cannibals at some point. There's no spoiler.
Of course you do.
But, as you do.
As you do.
But, you know, I don't like, for instance, The Mist. I don't think it's a great movie, but I think it has good stuff in it, and my favorite part in it is watching them tear each other apart. These human beings put under this strain start to form groups and start to destroy each other little by little by little. That's always fascinated me. It's always frightened me. So this plays into that with me as well. So it's really, for me, a perfect storm of emotions that was created by this film. I bought it right after I watched it. So I watched it on YouTube. So it's already in my PS4 ready to play.
That's awesome. I liked their arc a lot more than a lot of those kind of isolated apocalyptic kind of stories. Zombie stories don't work for me because you have characters who are too almost giddy for the apocalypse, where they've been waiting all their life to have the rules be thrown out, and they do so in a very predictable manner. I like it when people try to keep maintaining order when there shouldn't be any.
Yeah.
And that's what you see going on here. The man that Aguirre is served under to for such a long time is just that, right? He just doesn't.
Well, that guy doesn't get it.
Doesn't get it at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is you're the commander here, but once we get down the jungle a few 100 leagues down the river, you think that title's going to save you? It's nothing. It literally means nothing out here.
When that protocol, Herzog ties into the class system, and he ties also very coldly towards religion as well. These artificial creations that we have don't matter against the forces of science and nature.
Yeah, that's kind of the thesis of its film. Even human emotion, even like or human desire, it just doesn't matter.
Right.
It just gets squashed. You know, it's kind of like it was. And it's hard for humans to wrap their minds around their insignificance.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of at the core of what this movie's about. You know, it's like, for instance, you know, it's like hearing people talk about global warming, we're going to destroy the planet. well, you destroy the planet. What you mean is you destroy you.
Right.
You destroy us.
The planet survives.
The planet keeps going.
Yeah.
You know, one way or another, it's going to be around. It was here long before you got here. It's survived an ice age. It's survived volcanoes. It'll be here. That is essential, that sort of existentialness. And it's expressionist, too, but it's kind of at the core what it's about, like this feeling of insignificance and the inability to cope with that. The movie's called Aguirre, The Wrath of God. Mm-hmm. He thinks he is going to unleash the wrath of God once this stuff happens because he's him and he's here, and what other reason could there be for his existence other than that?
And the quest for El Dorado, the city of gold, is such a brilliant metaphor for that frivolous mindset, because you're going after a currency that can change value depending on how much you have of it.
It's only as valuable. Exactly.
Yes. It is a resource that is out there that we decided is important because it's shiny and limited.
Yeah. And that kept coming back to me, you know, like waves crash on the ocean, the whole film. I kept thinking, what's the point of this gold?
Yes.
Like, I mean, at what cost? Even if you find the gold, you're not going to make it back.
No,
like, you can't spend this gold. I mean, and how do the indigenous people here value the gold? How do the monkeys on your boat value the gold? How do the elements value your gold? Did they value it the same way they valued that ship that's 70 feet up in that tree, and whoever might have been on that, who's definitely dead now? Like, what, I mean, at what point, at what cost, at what? And then you can almost throw that question back the other way, because if we are so insignificant, then again, what is really the risk? What is really the cost? I don't know. Again, I don't know why this film was so personal to me, but it exists more on a philosophical plane than it does as just like a conversation about pictures, you know?
Well, and looking at the role of gold, they meet someone who they have a conversation with in the jungle who has that necklace. And it's funny because they, of course, rip the necklace off the guy's neck.
Yeah.
And the guy seems fine with it.
Yeah.
I just kind of I was waiting for him, like, no, it's a family thing. No, it's fine. He can make another necklace.
Yeah, exactly. Rip it off because it's gold. Then he hears, then they listen for God. That's, again, you start to get into some pretty, what does this mean to you? How does this make you feel? And all of those beats typically, which can get rather mundane at times and sometimes can be a little too indulgent. It never felt like that was the case here because every shot was so perfectly well thought out, even if it happened a second before he said action. Yeah. But there's not a boring thing to look at in this film. Every shot felt important, even if I didn't understand why. Yeah. I ended up just putting complete trust and faith into the filmmaker in a way. I gave up that control in a way I don't do. I don't ever feel that way. There's always something to criticize. I'd never felt like that this year. It almost just sort of washed over me rather than being like, oh, this is, structured this way and, blah, 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 blah. I never...
It just has a way more organic feel to it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's really rich to watch films like that every once in a while. It makes you value the depths of cinema.
And I thought I had seen them all.
Yeah. Don't you feel like talking to sometimes?
You do get to that point sometimes. And it's like I told you, this is probably my second favorite film we covered.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were going to be honest and like the list of best, it'd probably be in the top 10. But as far as like the way I enjoyed it and consumed it, it would be probably number 2, I would think.
Well, I think we've now set the highest bar for the weeks to come. I think your number 1, I believe, is The Godfather Part 2.
The Godfather Part 2,
which was also our first entry into De Niro.
Yeah, no.
Where we set the bar high for him as well.
True. It's true. It wasn't my favorite De Niro performance, though. So.
It's true. That was The Deer Hunter, episode 2.
That's right.
I think it's time to wrap it up and contemplate God for a while.
Yeah, I mean that's where it's transcendent, right? It exists to be something more, and oftentimes that doesn't make it out of pre-production, but somehow it made it here in the jungle, down a raft, down a river. It's unbelievable.
So in case anyone hasn't seen this film yet, we highly recommend it. It is extremely well done. There is a version on YouTube, but truly try to find the best copy of it you can, because it is something special and strange and something you've never seen before. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have 4 more films like that coming up.
It's true.
Next week, we're going to be reviewing his horror film, the remake of Nosferatu the Vampyre. But until then, you can leave a comment about this episode or any episode at theartimmortal.com. You can leave us a review on iTunes. Really appreciate it when people can find our show that way. You can check out my other podcast, The Immortals, where 5 of us reviewed the 1001 movies, albums, food, songs, children's books, and TV shows you must see before you die. In yesterday's show, episode 49, we reviewed the short film J'étais, which was the inspiration for 12 Monkeys. Also, the TV show Das Boot.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was a miniseries before it was re-edited into a movie. So that was a fun episode. And where else can we find you, Eric?
Constant Diversion is my YouTube channel.
But you said it in like a Bond pose as well.
Well, it's just like every time I say it too fast, and I always end up having to repeat it. So
Yeah.
Nothing new happening there yet. But
No,
there will
but
be soon.
it's great stuff all around.
Good, yeah. We got a
But
good
you guys have a great library of videos.
Yeah,
They're
we're at
not,
that point now.
reacting to the week's news kind of thing. It is like, here is a completed video about Uncharted series and
something.
whatnot. Yeah.
Definitely.
So
I appreciate that.
check it out. And that's it for us this week. My name's Austin Luger.
My name's Eric Martinell.
We'll catch you next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Let me ask you about working with Klaus Kinski. He doesn't look like an easygoing guy.
Well, let me put it this way. Marlon Brando has a reputation as being a difficult actor, but I think in comparison to Kinski, is probably only like a docile extra on a set. No, but there's so much talk about the difficulties with Kinski. Of course he is difficult, but all his madness is his real quality. You only have to make it productive for the screen. And so what do all the battles count that we had? We do have a very deep understanding that probably actors and directors normally do not have.
Okay, I want to ask you one more question about Klaus, and then we'll go back to Mick. Not on this film, but on another film. Did you pull a gun on Klaus?
Well, there are some crazy reports about that. I must say that was on an earlier film, the Aguirre, the Wrath of God. He had an argument with a sound assistant. He demanded from me ultimately that I should dismiss the man, and it was all Klaus's fault. I said, no, I won't dismiss him. And he said, I'm going to fire him. And I said, no, you don't do that. So he said, I'm going to leave. And that was 10 days before the end of shooting, and he packed everything and went into this speedboat, and I came unarmed, of course, and I spoke quite with a soft voice, and I told him I would shoot him. He would reach the next river bend, and he would have 8 bullets in his head, and the last would be for me. So the man has instincts, and he knew it was no joke anymore. He was kind of scared, and he screamed for the police, but for about 600 miles around there was, of course, no police post. So it was to no avail.